Welcome back again. If you are new to this channel, and I'm not very good at it, I don't think it's going to ever become a full-time career, you'll know that I've been playing with this XJ-S and this MG midget over here. I haven't become really small. We're here with the XJ-S today, which is jacked up in the air. I thought I'd show you what the condition of the car is like underneath. It's quite good, but I do have a few small jobs to do. There is a big job to do at the front, which is to fix some fairly big power steering leaks. For one reason or another, I haven't bought the parts of that yet, but I do have some other stuff to be getting on with, and I'll show you what that looks like now. And here's what we're looking at. This here is one of the exhaust mounts for one of the back boxes. The metal's in reasonable condition on both of mine, but the rubber has collapsed on one, which means that the two exhaust pipes hang at different angles. These are the exhaust mount bushings for the over-axle pipes, which are inside the independent rear suspension cradle. I'll show you them when we get to them. And these, unfortunately, are a new pair of handbrake pads. I say unfortunately, I replaced those when I had the independent rear suspension out of the car to change the rear brakes. Both of the rear calipers were at least partially seized, one piston in both. The discs were well done, and I ended up dropping the suspension much quicker than I intended to. Like I said, new pads went in. I bought the cheaper ones that are available. I won't say which business they came from. I don't think that's the right thing to do. After a few hundred miles, one of the pads disintegrated, and the handbrake is no longer effective on that side. Like I said, I did contact the seller. They didn't seem particularly interested. They suggested that I must have over-tightened the little nut which goes on here and retains it. I am absolutely certain I did not. I left everything reasonably loose, in fact, but the friction material has disappeared. I don't really care so much about the price of the pads. Obviously, I would rather have my £30 back than not, but the real problem is that it is an absolute pain to get to them. I'll show you what I mean. This is the underside of the car. There is a little bit of surface corrosion on both of the rear wings at the bottom. The exhaust system isn't nice, but it is reasonably intact. On the longer term plan, I would like to get rid of that. The drains are clear, they work on both sides, that's good. The floor is in superb condition. The inside of the bumpers, the steel's not great. I think at some point I probably am going to have to do something with that. But for as unsightly as tarnished chrome looks, it's not top of my agenda at the moment. The independent rear suspension cradle is in quite good condition. The springs are a bit corroded, but they're not broken. The dampers don't leak, but they don't damp that well either. Everything else is fairly good. Most people, when they take these apart, they strip it right down to nuts and bolts and get everything blasted and cleaned and painted. Last year we had a holiday planned, the first time we'd been away due to COVID, etc., for quite a long time. And we had this car booked onto the ferry to go to Orkney. And then the back brakes started grinding. I wasn't happy about that at all. But the long and the short of it is that it just wasn't the correct thing to do, to dismantle this car so quick into, well, buying it, really. So the IRS came out, the discs were changed, the calipers were changed, the handbrake pads were changed, and most of it's still fine, but the handbrake pads are not. Looking up to the V-mounts, etc., everything's actually quite good. It's not bad at all for a car this age. This car will be 33 this year. Let's go a little further under. Right, this is the rear brake setup. This is the left-hand caliper as you stand behind the car looking forward. Passenger side if you drive on the correct side of the road in the UK. And up on top, in there are, hang on, I can't get this to focus. Up in there are two pins that come upwards and out, and then the handbrake calipers. This is the lever arm for it. That's a cable that pulls it that way and it works. That slides that way up into the floor of the car, and you can get to the, well, you can't really get to the pads. That's the point. My light just fell down. I'm not looking forward to changing those pads. This is the main reason why I'm quite annoyed about those pads disintegrating. It is an absolute pain in the ass to get to them. But what can you do? When I had to change the calipers, I spent about 2 days fighting under here, trying to get things moving. Now that I've had the independent rear suspension out, I understand how it goes together. I don't know whether this is a good thing to do or complete folly, but I'm going to try and get this handbrake caliper out the way I've seen some of the Jag techs on various forums describe how they used to do it when working in the dealerships. Wish me luck. These are unusual pins. They are quite long, about 2.5 inches if I remember right. They're threaded at the top, but most of the, near the head I mean, but most of the shank is an unthreaded pin which locates the handbrake caliper into deep holes in the main brake caliper. Like that. Let's get the other one out. I like to use just a socket. It just makes it a bit easier sometimes to turn a screw or a bolt in its thread. That's that out. And then here's the plate that retains it. This is the spring. That could be difficult to get back in situ, we'll see. And then, if I'm able to do it, how can I do this? That is the handbrake caliper moving. Let's see how I can get that to move more now. Back soon, but I need 2 hands. Right, I've managed to get the handbrake caliper out of the slot that it sits in. No, I can't show you, but you can just see it behind the elbow in that green pipe there. It is where it should bed in. And then you can see a hole where that big pin goes through. So when it's in place, that's fine. I've done this by rotating the handbrake caliper up and over the brake disc, and then at the top I'm able to get it over and in, but I can't get the thing out. It's I read the people that claim to be Jaguar technicians said it comes out behind, I just can't see how that can happen. And as with everything on this assembly, there's insufficient space between the differential casing and the brake disc to bring it out forwards. The widest part of the handbrake caliper is wider than that gap. So I'm not sure we've got a way forward other than releasing the radius arms, the exhaust flanges, possibly that brake pipe up there. Oh no, where is it? It's up there somewhere. Up in here. And lowering the independent rear suspension a bit. Probably doesn't need to come down a whole lot. But, well, it's not going to fix itself. Time to just bite the bullet and get on with it. Top tip, don't waste your time working on the back brakes on these cars. You can change the pads in situ, everything else, forget it. Alright, to get the independent rear suspension out, you have to undo this exhaust clamp, holding the over-axle pipe to the back box. You need to cut the, where is it? You need to cut the wire locking, holding the radius arm into the floor. If you've got a 1989 onwards car, you have to remove the, I've forgotten the word, the ABS sensor. And you have to undo 3 bolts on that flange for the centre box to over-axle pipe. Eventually, I'm going to try and see if I can just lower this thing asymmetrically a little bit and get away with not disturbing the brake pipe union, which is on the far side, or the prop shaft. Although the prop shaft's 4 bolts, it's not the end of the world if I have to do that, but this might save me some time. I think all I need is a little bit of extra height between the top of the cage and the floor. So if this side can come down like a couple of inches, I think I'm okay. And that can be done by removing the V-bolts. Now, you've either got a choice of 2 big nuts and bolts on each V-mount, which go through the over-axle chassis box sections, or you can undo the locating nuts here on the studs, and then in the back there is a 1/2 inch nut and bolt on either side. Either's okay, and that will allow the IRS to be lowered. I've got the exhaust flange released. The nuts and bolts on this are actually in quite good condition. I mean, they're always going to go rusty on an exhaust, as you know, but could always be worse. Now, these ones, the radius arm. If you haven't done this before, take great care. This one is 9/16 of an inch. This one is 5/8. They are, I'll try and remember the thread. If I can find the thread, I'll post it in the description, just in case you require it. Be very, very, very careful not to shear this one off. Soak it for as long as you can afford beforehand in penetrating oil, and don't use an impact gun on it. Don't do anything like that. Go really gentle, really careful, and be very conscious of what you're doing. If you shear that off in the hole, you've opened yourself up to a world of pain. Ask me how, I know. This wasn't on the agenda for today, but I spotted something, I don't know if you did, in the last little bit that I was looking at. These radius arms are well known for rusting out. Obviously, MOT failure when they go. They are quite expensive. I think they're over £100 a side. And in fact, when I tried to buy one for the other side of the car, when this small bush at the axle end failed, I was told by the supplier that he couldn't supply because, for whatever reason, the subcontractor who made the little circle bits at either end had gone out of business or something like that, and they were unable to get the complete fabrication. On the other side, the metal was good, so I just replaced the bushes with the original metal elastic. On this side, this is the original radius arm. The other side's been replaced at some point. I can tell because at the back end it has the anti-roll bar lugs still on. They were reintroduced later, I think, which means it's or deleted. Either way, if this age of car's got the lugs, it's a replacement arm. This is the original. I don't really want to spend that money just now. I mean, I could. I don't really want to. I'd rather spend that on fixing the power steering leaks. I'm sure somebody watching will be thinking, well, why don't you just spend more? Well, I'm not. So, suck it. What I am going to do is weld that up. We'll be able to get another year out of this, I think, providing I catch this now. As you can see, I've buffed it back. There are a few pinholes, but we've got bright metal, and it's basically okay. I just don't want to fail the MOT on that. So we'll get that done, get some paint on it, then crack on with what I came out here to do in the first place. But glad I spotted that now. I wouldn't want to get that as news at the MOT. Right, I wasn't expecting to have to do some welding today, but we've got it done. Here we are. Just sprayed some stone chip on it just to try and keep the surface rust off, at least from the outside. These arms aren't very good actually. They kind of are designed to trap water and rust through. Kind of typical of British cars really, just in some ways inspired, in other ways just really, really stupid. What can you do? Right, back to the job that I came out to do and try and get this independent rear suspension lowered a bit, and we'll get the brake caliper done. Right, just getting these bolts out now. Right, here's the safety bracket. It's quite a fine thread on the bolts. You can also see some signs of Loctite in there. They don't want them to fall out, but equally there's no point in over tightening these because they are wire locked. There's no need to over tighten things. There's no points for being a gorilla in this game. None whatsoever. Sometimes these can stick. What I'm going to do is just give that a bit of a love tap with the screwdriver. We'll see what happens. Right, I've taken these bolts out. You can see I've got probably just under 2 inches of drop on this side. I have not released the radius arm, and the exhaust has come down quite nicely. It's still on the big trolley jack, but I've got an axle stand under the hub as well. If it does start to fall, the suspension springs will stop it from completely crushing me. But this should do the trick, hopefully. Let's get underneath and see what happens. I'm not really sure what's visible from the video, but it looks like I've got more space to play with up here. So I'm going to give this a go and see what happens. I've got far too much experience to call this success, because it has to go back in yet, but with the pads on, and I think that will require a little bit more room. This only just came out using a series of somersaults and backflips of the caliper within the space in the cage. Yeah, I wonder if it'll go in with the pads on. Well, there's only one way to find out, and it needs pads. So if I end up having to take the other side of the IRS down, so be it, but this was enough to get the damn thing out. So it feels like I've made some progress. Okay, kit of parts. Another piece of this friction material has just broken away while I've been handling this. But these are the little securing bolts that the retailer of said pads thinks I've over tightened. I don't think so. I don't think so at all, in fact. There's not enough friction on that to ratchet it. These are the pads reassembled into the handbrake caliper. That all went quite smoothly. Actually, the old backing plates, one thing I remember looking back now was that these pins didn't slide easily into the slots. I mean, they do now because the material's disintegrated. I just don't think the material was very well cast onto the backing plates, and I think it may have been the act of sliding these in that they needed a little bit of a tap, as I recall at the time. These pads were £70, much more expensive for such stupid little things that they are. These ones were 30. I think they were just rubbish. It's nothing to do with over tightening. I can see what they mean. If it all works and you over tighten these, then I think what will happen is that you'll rotate this, and then it'll sort of cam the friction pad off, but it would break off either side. That's not what's happened here. There was a clunk and the whole lot fell out at once. Useless, but there we are. Right, let's see if it's possible to get that back into the car. I really hope that it is. I have only gone and got the damn thing in. The bit that's a little bit challenging, but I'm sure I will overcome, if we can see, is getting this spring into that hole beside it. So we've got to get the spring up and over the back plate of the pad without breaking the pad, or we're back in square one, and get the spring in place. I don't know if it's the right thing to do, I might take it back out, but I've got one of the pins in to stop the other side falling out while I'm doing this. If it prevents me from getting this right, I might have to pull that and then worry about it again later. But so far, so good. Alright, as you can see, we're driving. That means the car's back together. My battery went flat halfway through. I thought that was bad planning on my part, but having looked at the time at the end, it took me literally all day to change that handbrake pads with the subframe in situ, with the partial drop. It did work, it was a success, but I would recommend that you don't bother doing that. I think it probably would have been quicker in the long run just to drop the independent rear suspension in its entirety. The only downside to doing that is you'd have to bleed the rear brakes again, but overall it'd be better. It's just painful trying to contort yourself into funny shapes to reach everything, and it's a game of 3D Tetris to get the calipers out and in, and the spring in particular is a real nightmare. So it's working, the handbrake works, it almost holds the car, but not quite. I think we'll have to do some adjustment. But we're there. I've also managed to improve an exhaust connection. But for now, if you watched the last midget video that I published yesterday when I'm filming this, it's my daughter's 12th birthday today, so we're in the XJ-S, heading into town to get some birthday dinner of her choosing. Right, to finish this one up, I had to go back under and do a little adjustment again. The handbrake calipers are adjusted just by ratcheting them against the full action, and it closes up the gap as a self-adjuster. We'll just show you what the test drive is like now on my own driveway. This is all my road, so I can legally hold the phone because it doesn't matter, it's private. Right, if I pull the parking brake, the car comes to a halt. We're still in drive, and I mean, it pulls it against the engine, but that's normal. It holds it in drive or reverse, which is good. And if I put the car into reverse, the back towards my driveway, my garage, sorry, there is a bit of an incline. So we will reverse the car back down. I'm looking in my mirrors, I know what I'm doing. Right, this is a reasonably steep incline. We're still in reverse. Previously, the parking brake wouldn't hold the car against reverse. In fact, it wouldn't even hold the car against its own weight in neutral. But I would say we have successfully fixed the handbrake, and this pleases me. Thank you for watching. I will try to get better at making videos, and I do greatly appreciate the moral support. It's not a monetized channel. I can't imagine I'll ever be good enough to do that, but there we are. Thank you.